Missing out on family time because of all the noise? Enjoy the moment without straining to keep up with the conversation.
Wow, what a beautiful sunset.
Discover Nuance Audio, the new invisible hearing solution that's built into your glasses. Discreet, comfortable, and easy to use. Nuance Audio glasses help you hear better and reduce background noise, so you can get back to enjoying time with your loved ones. Find a store near you at nuanceaudio.com.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Mondays for us is our base downs, which is first and second downs. And then we get into on Tuesday, get into our third downs. And so we'll practice third downs. And then for us on our Wednesday is where we do red zone and short yardage. And then we'll also, there's something that on Monday and Tuesday that we've, maybe struggled with a little bit and we got to hit again. We'll do that again on Wednesday. So our practice, that's kind of the structure we do. I'll tell you just efficiency wise, we do use go route.
Welcome to another episode of The Art of Practice presented by Go Route. Today we're going to dig into designing practices for situational success. And joining me is Ryan Luedecke, who is the defensive coordinator at Lake Travis High School in Texas.
What's worse than an ad interrupting your favorite music or podcast? That uninspired coffee you've been drinking while working, which is why Flavia is elevating your everyday coffee experience. Now you can enjoy cafe-quality beverages like coffee, tea, frothy lattes, and creamy hot chocolate made right in your home office, actual office, or wherever you want to upgrade your mug with bold, delicious flavors. Visit Flavia.com to shop the collection of machines and beverages now.
Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Coach, we're getting into this idea of just designing practices that win, especially some of those moments that become critical in games, the situational football stuff, whether that's end of game, red zone, third down, fourth down, whatever it might be. We have to prepare our teams in context, right? Not just go out every day and run plays to get sharper. That's important. The timing's important, but the understanding of how this fits into the context of the game is important as well. And so those are some of the things we're going to dig in today, as well as talking about how you make every situational rep count through faster setup, better execution, and efficiency through go route. So let's start with this, Coach. What does situational success look like for you guys on the field when you think about that?
Yeah, I think ultimately for us defensively, we want to obviously get off the field on third down. And so preparing our kids, getting our weekend work done and figuring out what the opponent's going to do throughout the game in those situations that matter, getting off the field. And so trying to prepare our kids what that looks like for that opponent, really by situation, like we talked about, down a distance. Is it third and short, or is it third and medium, or is it third and long? So I try to get across to our kids, throughout the week as we're practicing those scenarios. What is our calls? What is that going to look like for us? What's our first bullet, and what's our second one, and what's our third one like, throughout that game? And so hopefully our kids by the end of the week know what those are, so they're confident in running them.
Coach, all the work we do, we want it to show up on game day. Can you point out an example of something you think about, hey, we work this period all the time, or we work these drills all the time from a situational standpoint? One of those examples where it shows up in the game and the kids perform it as you've planned. Just give it an example of where that showed up on game day.
Yeah, one of our big opponents, one of our rival schools, third and medium situation, something that we've practiced, throughout the year. Every Tuesday, we do third down situations, and we get a call in, and it was exactly what we thought was going to happen. Kids executed our call defensively, and we were able to kind of bluff out of it and make them throw the ball in the flats pretty quickly. They can kind of show the pressure and then kind of bluffed out of it. They threw a kind of a quick out route, and we were able to rally to it, and got off the field. So that was one of the situations where we try to talk to our kids about, yes, we have plays just like offenses. And so we obviously want to, when are we going to use these calls? What situations are we going to use them? Are they base downs? Are they third downs? Are third and short? Are they third and longs? What are these calls that we have? When do we want to use them? And so getting that information to our kids throughout the week as we're practicing, probably the most important thing. If you talk to some of our defensive guys as we kind of get through the year, they'll be able to call out some of our best calls versus those situations. And so getting the kids to understand down and distance throughout practice is obviously important. So you're obviously going to practice those situations.
So we start, this time of the year, we get into the summer and we have to install the plays. And we're thinking more in terms of the general, but we have to get to that specific. Like I said, the game's always played in context. So what's that shift for you? How does that start to move from here's our general install to here's our purpose-driven scenarios and situations?
Yeah, I would say we do spring ball here in Texas at the big schools. And so we're able to get our defense installed during spring football, which we do 15 practices. And so throughout those practices, once our first 2 weeks are over, our install is kind of over, and we start really talking about situation football. We practice those situations in the spring, and those will carry over into our summer stuff. And then obviously, as we kind of get into the season, they'll be more specific to our opponent, kind of what, us coaches have broken down throughout the weekend and kind of came up with that game plan and what that looks like. So they'll be a little bit more specific, but our kids are going to know, again, probably in spring, what we're going to run on third and medium. Here's our 10 things we're going to do, or here's our 5 things we're going to do on third and long, especially our bread and butters. Now we can always, add something as we need it for an opponent later on. 99% of our defense has been installed.
So as you start to think about the design of practice and again, making it more intentional to the situations, how do you start to look at that structure, right? Game week obviously provides us a lot more in terms of how we're going to go. Everybody has a format on what they're going to do each day. But for you, what does that look like?
Okay. Yeah, so just talking about what our week looks like. Mondays for us is our base downs, which is first and second downs. It's kind of getting kids used to what is their coming out going to look like, their first play of series, or hey, their normal situations going to look like, right? And then we get into on Tuesday, get into our third downs, and so we'll practice third downs. So that's third and short, third and mediums, third and longs. Some third and extra longs potentially if we have those. And then for us on our Wednesday is what we do red zone and short yardage. So there's some carryover there. And then we'll also, Wednesday, if there's something that on Monday and Tuesday that we've, maybe struggled with a little bit and we got to hit again, we'll do that again on Wednesday. And so our practice, that's kind of the structure we do. I'll tell you just efficiency wise, we do use go route. If we're playing a team that wants to tempo us, we're able to use 2 scout teams and kind of, again, I would say most times before we use scout, we'd get 8 plays in 5 minutes. With scout, I get up to 17 plays in 5 minutes. So I can kind of double our tempo pretty quickly, and that's with a scout team. And so we can get those guys rolling if we are playing a tempo team, which is awesome. But also, even if we're not playing a tempo team, I can also get a lot of their play concepts into a short period of time. And so just efficiency, we're not wasting a whole lot of time. We're getting a lot more plays. And so our kids are seeing throughout the week, they're seeing a couple of hundred of plays from that opponent, which I think is a benefit.
Yeah, you mentioned being able to move at that rapid pace. And you see teams, whether they are tempo teams or not, they will use tempo in certain situations. So I think, first of all, for you, how do you figure those out? What's the practical way of, cut-ups don't necessarily show, what they're doing and what the transition is from one down to the next? Are they lining up and going, or, what exactly is happening? So how do you figure out some of those situational tempo type things? And then I guess, how do you make sure that go route is the key here? How do you get those done the exact way in practice?
Yeah. So, we scout our opponents, we send some of our staff to go scout. And so they'll pick up some of those scenarios. I would say most teams want to, a lot of times you can tell in huddle just because the speed of the film. If play is started, sometimes the play is started after a big play a lot of times. They'll know that they're kind of tempoing you there. And then obviously scouting them and seeing them scenario wise, what they like to do, tempo wise. And then kind of how do you practice it? The way we practice it currently, obviously we script every day. I script every day, every play we run. And so within practice, I'll kind of highlight the tempo plays for us, for our scout team coach. And he's able to kind of just tempo us every, third play or whatever that looks like for that week, especially after a big play. that kind of keeps our kids engaged in practice as well. What I would tell you, losing their thought process during the practice, that kind of keeps them on edge where they don't know it's a tempo. We may even practice tempo whenever we're not playing a tempo team, just to kind of keep our kids engaged in that. And so that's kind of how we do it. It may be every third play, it may be every other play. That varies based on our opponent, but that's kind of how we use it in practice.
So, looking at teaching situational awareness, all of that doesn't happen on the practice field. So, we talked about the general install. What does this start to look like for you in teaching those things through your meeting structures and walkthrough, as well as, getting into the practices?
Yeah, so something we've added over the last few years is walkthroughs. I would tell you that's been a benefit to our program. Obviously, kids, we're going to watch film with the kids, situational cut-ups, send those to the kids where they have to give us some feedback, where they have to watch it and give us a kind of their thought on it. That way we know they're at least watching it. And then the other thing is, like I said, walkthroughs have been critical to our success. That's just another way that we can teach it and they can hear it from my mouth together as a unit. And they're able to, we're able to go through what we're going to talk through, the situations through that day. Again, walkthroughs are in the morning before practice. And so we're able to talk through those meetings, what that looks like for practice. And then, if there's something that we got to touch base with again, that's obviously, we can walk through it again that afternoon during film, talk through that as a staff. Maybe we need to cut it. Maybe we need to add to it, whatever that looks like. But walkthroughs have been a key to our success. And then obviously, like I said, in the film room, we talk situational in the film room every single day. That's really what I would say success defensively. If the kids don't know the situation, it's hard. I may tell them a coverage, and if that coverage, if it's 3rd and 10 versus 3rd and 1, they have to play that coverage different. And so knowing the situation for us is the most critical.
Now, do you guys utilize Go Route at all in your walkthroughs?
Once a week we do. If I'm going to get a lot of plays in where there's things that like Mondays for us, we use it because for us, our scout team, it's our defensive players on the varsity. And so we're kind of running scout versus each other. And so getting into the formations where I can get into them and talk through that, what we're going to run versus it, what that's going to look like, things that we've talked on as a staff from the weekend. I got to make sure I touch on those on Monday morning. So those things we'll go route. We'll use those as walkthroughs on Mondays. We're going to try to incorporate a little bit more on Thursday too. We have some extra time on Thursday. We're going to start trying to use Go Route for the same concept. Kind of go back. Go Route has a great feature on there where you can click things that you have issues with. So you can kind of go back through those the next day or the next walkthrough. And so we've kind of utilized that a little bit. We're going to do that a little bit more, especially on Thursday mornings where we have a little bit more time to walk.
So in looking at putting things together, right? We work our 3rd down periods. We work our red zone periods. I mean, the thing about those, we say we're doing it in context, and it's within the context of those downs. But how do you get into more of, creating more of those scenarios that are going to go through a series and get them that feel? Because what you're trying to teach them to recognize on whatever it might be, hey, they get into a 3rd and short, they're going to tempo us, or whatever things you find in your scouting report, you still have to teach some of those. How do you get that done in practice?
Yeah, so on Wednesdays, something I didn't mention earlier, we do what I call a team situation periods. There's 2 or 3 of them at the end of practice. And those involve each one of our situations, right? And so I'll go 1st and 10, go do a 2nd and medium to a 3rd and short, and then come back with it. Maybe put a 4th down in there, maybe put a tempo in there, and then come back to 1st down again, do another 2nd down where that's short, maybe do a 3rd and long at that point. So kind of rotate, trying to hit every situation that we think from the week in a team, in a real live scenario where we have a down and distance marker out there for the kids, and I'm on the sideline signaling, and I want to hear what the situation is. I want them talking and communicating what the down distance is in practice. Again, in the games, you necessarily may not be able to hear them, but in practice, if they're practicing that, again, it's going to carry over to the game, right? And so hearing them there in practice, saying those things, knowing the situation, again, like I said, is the most important thing, because if I call a pressure or I call a blitz or I call a line game or coverage, that situation may change how I play it versus that situation. Again, and I may stop practice at that point and, okay, we didn't execute this good enough, and talk through that. All right, here's how this should happen, especially early in the year. We have younger kids trying to figure out, those situations and how I should do it. So I may stop it and kind of talk through that scenario with the kids if I think that's a big deal for us. That I think it's going to carry over to Friday night.
I think the other advantage when we think about the situational side of the game and what something like Go Route really helps us with is getting into those end of game situations that you need to defend. I mean, certainly the last thing you want to do is trying to run those those periods and have guys come back, look at a card, because that's just, unless the ball's stopped, is just not realistic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say we do all situations, 2-minute drills. We do 4-minute drills. Sometimes we'll do what we call crossover with our offense. If we're playing a team that we need, some big bodies, we'll use our offense as the scout team. And again, the way we do it with our go route is our defensive coaches, when they draw the plays, they name it what our offense calls it. And so what it allows our scout team to do, because we use our JV mostly, but then our varsity will use it once or twice a week for a crossover period. The offensive staff can just go, hey, it's this. And so again, efficiency, the kids can see it's what they call it offensively. So they're familiar with it and they know how to execute it faster. So I would say, just if I was recommending something, call it what your offense calls it. And that way that you can also, your scout team can play faster, because those are offensive kids that have been taught what their offensive calls are. And so we use that, which again, I said, with crossover, that allows us to play faster as well, especially if we need to see a situation where our offense has to give us a 10-play drive there, right? And so they can call it a little bit faster, use their signals, whatever that looks like for that situation.
I think one of the hardest things to really simulate in practice, because of your desire to go fast, it's emphasizing the right things, because you could still get your reps in, but the 4-minute, right? Whether that you're on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball, what are you guys coaching up in that 4-minute period, and how does that look for you in practice?
Yeah, so defensively, it depends on where the ball is at, obviously where they're getting the football. So like, how conservative are they going to be? And then teaching our kids, okay, what's the likelihood of them throwing the ball? Obviously, what does 4-minute mean? Number one, right? So they got to teach the kids what that looks like. What does that mean? What the scenario is, what the scoreboard looks like, right? And so if the offense is up and they're trying to hold on to the football, probability tells them they're going to run the football or easy throws, right? So they're not going to throw anything that they're going to sit back there all day and hold the ball. And so teaching our kids that, what the scenario looks like, not saying they can't throw the ball, but it's going to probably be some easy throws. And so being able to play those situations, but really, what do we like versus this? Do we want to just play our base? Or are we going to play some pressure? Are we going to put some extra guys in the box to make them throw the football, right? So being able to teach our kids what we like versus that, what we're going to do versus those, what our fronts are going to be, whatever that looks like week to week. But really trying to get those guys understanding what the situation is on that, right? Tackle the football, get the ball to the ref, let them up, get them up, all that stuff, so we can get the ball back to our offense. And so teaching the kids what, like I said, what 4-minute is, right? Or what 2-minute looks like, right? So they all watch football Saturday or Sunday, right? They're not necessarily watching it for the situations. And so I also tell them is, we need to watch situations. Come back on Monday morning. Let's talk about situations, right? What did y'all see this weekend that was a 4-minute situation or 2-minute situation or red zone? Where do teams want to throw the ball in the red zone? Like, what do teams want to do on 3rd and 10? Are they going to run all go routes? Are they going to run in sticks? Right. And so teaching those guys, even football from the high school level to the college level to NFL level, it's really relatable. It's football, and teams are going to do it's copycat. Teams are going to do over and over the same thing. And so if you're just watching it because your fantasy team, you're worried about what my fantasy team points are, who I'm going to, trade or whatever, pick up this week, then you're watching it for the wrong reasons, right? So getting those guys to really learn football, even by watching it on the weekends, I think is also important.
Coaches, if you're looking to maximize reps and create game-like tempo in practice, look no further than Go Route. With instant play call delivery, real-time adjustments, and seamless integration within your existing playbooks, Go Route allows your team to get the most out of every rep. Visit GoRoute.com today to see how top programs across the country are using it to level up their practices.
Yeah, that's always a challenge today, because you see more and more of these kids, they're watching it, the highlights on their phones, right? And those aren't in context either. So you got to emphasize, these situations. When you look at the things that happen occasionally or rarely throughout the year, but that you want your guys prepared when that might come up. What kinds of things maybe that are rare do you make sure that you cover at least a few times as you're going into the season and maybe here and there throughout the season?
Yeah, so I would say something that we do every Thursday is just go through scenarios like, end of the game, end of halves, right? We call it Mayday, but it's getting our guys on the field at where they get the ball on the 50-yard line or they get the ball on the 30-yard line. They got one play, right? So how are we gonna line up and what the situation is? Are we, a lot of times you see that throw Hail Marys. Like, you don't get that every game, but you got to practice it because that scenario is going to come up at some point, right? Teaching that every Thursday, we might sub in some of our taller receivers in there and teach those guys, hey, we're batting the ball down here. It's a volleyball spike and we're getting it to the ground. We're not trying to catch it. We don't want to tap it up. And so that's one scenario that we would work into the game, end of halves. And then obviously special teams for us, like, end of game, block kicks, block punts. Those scenarios that we work those on a daily. If you block the punt and it goes behind the line of scrimmage and they pick it up, you got to tackle them, all those things, right? So teaching those, the in-game scenarios that don't come up very often, we do it every week as a reminder. And eventually the kids, after about 2 weeks, the kids catch on with what that looks like. I mean, they're able to go through those scenarios pretty quickly. And so early on, it's a lot more teaching, but we spend time with those in-game scenarios that you may or may not see throughout that year. But if you don't practice them, you're never ready, right? So we got to make sure we do space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of distinctions too. And you mentioned end of game, end of half, and I've started to see it more. And I mean, I'm thinking back to some of the things we taught. I probably would teach it differently today in that end of half takes on much different meaning and context than end of game. As an example, I think there's opportunities for defense now on that Hail Mary. If you know that they only have their quarterback and 5 fat guys sitting back there, that if there's nobody in front of us, maybe we don't knock it down. We take that thing and go. Like thinking back to the scenario that always pops in my mind, the kick 6 from Auburn and Alabama, right? Like, I remember the guy on TV saying, there's only fat guys in front of him. Like, that's the situation. So at the end of the half, it's a little bit different than end of the game. Like, hey, we are just trying to knock it down. Is that anything you've thought about of looking at opportunities there?
Yeah, no, we do talk about that. Again, the same thing for, like you said, field goals, or, if it is, let's say they're on the 30, they're backed up on their own 30 and they got to drive and they got 30 seconds. Obviously, they might be playing for a field goal. So we're going to play probably a little bit more aggressive than we would if it was on our 30 and they got one play, right? And so going through each one of those scenarios throughout the week, or, field goal, it's a 50-yarder and this kid, it might be his career long. We're going to set somebody back there to catch the ball, right? Talk through them about, not stepping on the inline, be in front of the inline, but I'm trying to catch the football. All right. And then we set up a return, do all those things. So yeah, every one of those scenarios we kind of go through every Thursday.
Yeah. I was talking to an offensive coordinator, recently too. And he was talking about getting kids to understand, like, hey, in situations, you should be able to expect what we call, like, we're going to know what our quarterback's arm range is. There's definitely, we're not going to throw to the end zone when we're on the, 50-yard line and he's only going to reach to the 15. There's going to be something else brewing. Like, guys, we got to watch for like a hook and ladder,
or just something quick to the outside and get out of bounds.
Yeah,
try to protect the sidelines, make them catch it in bounds.
So last thing, Coach, as you're going through the season and you're evaluating your defense's performance in key situations, how might that change how you look at a practice a particular week? Maybe you're working something a little bit more. What kind of adjustments do you look to make over the course of the season to make sure that situationally you guys are sound?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, obviously winning the games is the most important. So, and getting off the defense, for me, the number one stat for us is getting off the football field, right? When we take the field, we want to get off of it. We don't want to give up points. So third downs is important. And so that's something that we track from the very beginning is third downs. And so obviously if we're not very good, I would say normally we're not as good as we are at the beginning of the year as we are at the end of the year. Part of that is because we're practicing it, more, but we're also emphasizing it as a staff. Every Saturday when we watch it with those kids, we have a cut up on third downs, and we watch the good and the bad. And so what I would tell you is, for us, third downs is the most important / fourth downs. Getting off the field, some teams are going to go for it on fourth, but getting the kids to realize that is the most important football down for us defensively. Kind of how we get to that is we talk to them about first and second down. We got to play those really good, right? Obviously, we kind of make a chart where it's when it's, third and long versus third and short, what does our success rate look like, right? And so getting our kids to see that, a visual of that, not only seeing themselves out there, how we can execute it better, but also seeing the stats. What does that look like? All these kids, like I said, they're all about fantasy. And so they know what numbers look like. And so we flash numbers at them. And that way they can get a good understanding both sides of it. But as we kind of go through the year, we're going to practice those scenarios that we struggled with. If we're not very good on third and mediums, Well, we're going to practice those maybe an extra period or extra 2 periods on Tuesdays. And maybe if we're really good on third and longs, hey, maybe we only have 1 period of third and longs. And so it just depends on what our kids are doing that year, because they change year to year. We just got to figure out as coaches what we're good at and what we got to work at. And so we kind of taper that based on what our kids are able to do.
So last thing I wanted to touch base with you on is obviously Texas has made some rule changes on the technology for in-game play calling and gridiron, go route gridiron, certainly coming to the forefront with that and what they can do with that. Is that something you guys are looking to use here?
We've looked at it. I'm trying to figure out how we can use it defensively. Again, technology is great. I love technology, but I also don't want to slow us down as our workflow, as the kids' pace. So I'm trying to figure out what the best way for us defensively that we can add it to us without, again, making it overwhelming for myself or coaches and kids. And so just trying to figure out what the best case scenario is for us. Again, I like the thought of it. It's a great product. It allows you to, number one, people stealing your signals. It allows people not able, you got to change signals every week because guys get your signals. And so this is one way that, you're able to send it straight into the kids without signal. And so I think that could be definitely a bonus.
Yeah, I mean, if you are somebody trying to steal signals, what's coming at the end of every defensive call, right, is usually the coverage. That's the structure and how things are set up. And I know, in its simplest form, you will see guys going 1, 2, 4. Very easy to pick up on. So that certainly has an advantage. And I would think too, the tempo side of the game. What is the tempo team trying to do? They're trying to force you to be vanilla and not let you get some of the things that you want to do get those calls into the game. Or the teams who are going to look, get up there, hustle up quick and look to the sideline. Like you have the ability now they change, you change, right? So whatever they saw isn't going to be what necessarily is going to be run against them.
And I think defensive coaches are kind of catching up with the offensive tempo guys. They're kind of, the tempo guys were going to a one-word call. I think defensively, teams are doing the same thing. One-word call tells them whether it's a pressure or it's just a base call. Defensive coaches are catching up with that. So all one-word calls are awesome, or kind of helping our side of the ball.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, again, I think of just the efficiency of getting that in where it could, you're buzzed and that's showing up on your wristband really quick, I think is good. And I think, talked with Drew Robinson about this is, I think one of the keys is, the whole look, even if you're a defense that says, hey, we're not going to sit here. They just changed what they're doing to attack this. You could still keep your eyes on what's going on in front of you here instead of looking to the sideline and people are moving and you got to adjust. So I think there's a ton of features. I know this is a year where using it for the first time, a lot of coaches will have to figure out what is the efficiency? How can we be most effective with this? And I think more than anything, how does this become a weapon for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people probably struggle that early on, just figuring out what's good for them, what works for them, right? Everybody has a structure. Everybody's trying to figure out what that looks like. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure that out for us and still working on that, but I would love to use that product.
So, Coach, I really appreciate you taking time here and sharing some ideas with us on situational practice, and want to wish you and Lake Travis the best of luck here in 2025.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate everything.
Thanks for tuning in today's episode of The Art of Practice presented by Go Route. If you found value in this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode. Visit GoRoute.com to learn more and to take your program to the next level. Be sure to check out CoachingCoordinator.com for additional content and information from our episodes, and follow us and interact on X at Coach K. Grabowski.